Hi, everybody. Hi, Rajeev. How are you?
Very well, Sophie. Thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Hi, Naval. How are you? Oh, you're on mute.
It's the most commonly used phrase.
I'm good, Sophie. Thank you.
Great. Has the rain stopped in India yet, or is it still monsoon?
No, we are having a stretch monsoon, and we're enjoying our what we call as chai pakoras or tea fritters, which is very popular due to the rain. So it's good to have an extended monsoon.
Great. We'll just wait for some people to join. How are you, James?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I was just going to say, you're on mute is probably the most commonly used phrase of the year.
That's right.
Yes, indeed it was.
In
It was
this
good
new
to hear
virtual
one more
world.
time.
All right, we're just letting people join in and then we'll get started shortly and introduce the panelists. But we'll note also it's Are You OK Day today. So just want to make sure all my panelists are feeling good, not too nervous, excited for this webinar.
Absolutely, Sophie. Thank you, and hope everyone is doing okay. We are definitely doing okay today.
Great. All right, well, we might get started. So today we're here to talk about the digitisation of logistics service providers and why 3PLs need to innovate to stay ahead of the curve. We've got panelists represented from two companies. So TMX, which is a consulting company creating end-to-end supply chain solutions for businesses across Australia Pacific. And also Ramco Systems, who provide cloud-based platforms tailor-made for 3PLs and freight forwarders, including TMS, WMS, and fleet management. I'll start by introducing the panelists. So firstly, we have Naval Sabharwal, Global Head of Logistics and Supply Chain from Ramco Systems. Rajeev Singh, Vice President of Ramco Systems Australia. James Sheerin, Senior Consultant at TMX, and myself, Sophie Moran, Manager at TMX also. As we'll be going through the webinar, we'd like to ask you to put in questions. There's a Q&A box down the bottom of your screen. We'll try to answer as many as we can as we go, but there'll be additional time at the end also. So we're really hoping this will be a nice interactive webinar. So feel free to fire as many questions at us as you can. So introducing the topic, the reason we're here today is really because expectations on third-party logistics providers are rapidly changing, and businesses are expecting high levels of visibility, fast delivery, and optimization throughout their supply chains. 3PLs have increasingly been challenged by new disruptive models and digital technologies, and those who want to stay competitive need to evolve with the digital age and fast. This word, digitisation, is a big word. So I might ask you, Rajeev, could you just give us your definition of digitisation in this context?
First of all, thank you, Sophie. Thank you for having me here. It is a really exciting conversation to have, and along with the participants who have joined us. And I hope everyone is doing okay on Are You OK Day and throughout. Look, as the word suggests, and all of us commonly know, digitization would refer to electronic exchange of information. But in the context in which we are discussing today, I'd say that a digitization for a 3PL organization would mean that you are having seamless flow of information in near real time within your organization and across your customers, your subbies, your agents, and ideally with other stakeholders like regulator in electronic form. Mm-hmm. So that would be a kind of basic definition I can think of, Sophie.
Yeah, that's a great one. So seamless information using real-time data. And I think it also creates effective action, having this information at hand. James, perhaps you can give us a little bit of background on the state of play at the moment and why we're here talking about digitisation of logistics service providers.
Yeah, thanks, Soph. We're here today talking about it because it's such a global trend with the advancements of technology coming from globalization, and supply chains now are really at the forefront of that conversation in terms of navigating unprecedented waters created by COVID, and the complexities around logistics tasks, whether you're a 3PL, whether you're a forwarder, whether you're a carrier. So in terms of the logistics service provider world, there's a lot going on, and technology is again at that forefront. So it's a highly topical area at the moment, and everyone in the industry is really jostling to understand what does technology and digitization mean for them, how can they leverage it, and how can they really add value to their customers, across cost, across service, across compliance, and importantly across sustainability as well.
Lots of elements there, really. That's 4 key really areas, and sustainability is a really important one as well. Naval, perhaps from your perspective, what do you see are the main drivers that is causing 3PLs to adopt technology?
Sure. So Sophie, logistics as an industry is at the cusp of leaping ahead in technology. And the primary drivers that are making it happen are, first and foremost, the push from the shippers, that are the customers, who are demanding it now. And the second is on competition. The competition is pushing people out who don't have technology. Visibility by the complete ecosystem is now a must. It's a basic necessity and you can't escape it. A lot of these LSPs who invested in technologies in 90s and early 2000 are older technology. They're not able to support it. It's not integrated. And also their inability to interact with the external world. So in short, they need to now take a decision that should I be left out or get into the game or remain in the game. So it's about remaining in the game. That's probably the main driver for the LSPs to invest in technology.
Yeah, that's so true, that even if people had invested some time ago, that's now becoming out of date. So it's really, there's no option but to continue that journey. And why would you say that some technologies have higher adoption rates over others?
From basically, deriving from the drivers that I spoke about, some of the technologies that would have higher adoption, since now logistics service providers are not as mature in technology like banking and airlines, is investments will now go up and adoption will go up in integrated platforms which are configurable and automate the business. Adoption will go up in digital ecosystem interaction tools so that there's seamless communication, as Rajeev pointed out. That's what the purpose of digitization is. Business intelligence, reporting, data analytics, these are areas that where the investments are clearly visible. Mobility and scanning solutions is another one. And of course, visibility, real-time data visibility on portals and notifications coming your way. Optimization, maps, a number of things are happening around this industry. And these are the kind of technologies that will find early adoption because that's going to fulfill the basic needs of the industry. And then you can have a lot of futuristic tools built on the platform or the foundation that you build.
Yeah, that's some really good points there. Rajeev, I'd like to understand from your point of view, what are some of the current challenges that 3PLs are having and why are they needing to innovate?
Sophie, Naval alluded to a few things and I'd like to pick up from there, right? So obviously there is expectation from market regarding a 3PL being able to be flexible and respond with speed. So that takes me to kind of operating model challenge, right? So many 3PLs have grown with traditional operating model, which is primarily consisting of experience of people that you have in your business, the physical capabilities, your assets, your capacities that you have, and the conventional relationships that you have built in the marketplace, right? So these were the core elements of conventional operating model. Now market is expecting speed, flexibility, and a different operating model. And then of course, all of this is being reflected in cost and margin pressure, right? 3PLs continuing to try to compete on price will keep driving them down. Right? So this is reflecting this. So that I would consider as a significant challenge, that how do you go into the future? Do you have the right operating model to avoid competing on price all the time?
So you really
There are a few others, of course, but let us see if there are questions around that. We can expand on it later.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that it's really about staying competitive by value-add services rather than just trying to drive down costs.
Yes, Sophie, and look, we are seeing this through our engagement with 3PLs, right? We primarily are engaging with 3PLs, partnering with them. But it would be really interesting for me to ask James, who sits with shippers, helping them select right kind of 3PLs all the time. So it would be good to perhaps throw this question back to James as to what he is saying, sitting from where he does.
Yeah, thanks, Rajeev. I think you and Naval raise interesting points around the relationship between service and cost. And I think, you know, the narrative has changed, right? Like now we've seen service starting to get more attention, because I think people are now aware that there is that relationship directly with cost. So when we're talking technology, it's not necessarily just looking at what the value adds are from a cost perspective, but also from a service perspective, and understanding how those two drive each other. You know, talking shippers, they're certainly after certainty, right? Or as close as you can get to that in the current environment. And, you know, how technology can enable strong customer service, cost controls, compliance controls in a regulatory sense, and also from a sustainability perspective, as we've mentioned, but also that continuous improvement piece. So in terms of dealing with 3PLs, how are shippers actually managing technology? It's all well and good to have it once you've got a bespoke solution, whether you've procured that or developed that in-house, but then how do you actually manage it? So we've seen a real emergence of the continuous improvement function over the last years, internally within shippers' businesses, but also within 3PLs. So I think that's very incumbent on the relationship between the two to manage technology, manage the data, manage the insights that it generates, and, you know, drive value going forward.
Great, that's so true, James. And I think also as we see this rise of e-commerce, we're seeing dramatically shifting customer expectations, such as next day delivery. So that's driving the need for visibility through the chain and impacting B2B expectations as well.
I think you're 100% right there, Sophie. It's the goalposts have shifted, and, you know, real-time visibility is paramount. So that will enable the certainty as much as possible. And I think that, you know, shippers, you know, as well as 3PLs to service their customers, they need that real-time visibility, not just from a domestic standpoint in terms of supply chain management, but also international, given we've seen so many issues upstream at the moment as a result of COVID, you know, impacting the global supply chain.
And James, perhaps I'll chip in here. I'm just recalling a recent incident while talking to owner of a 3PL business in New Zealand, and they primarily handle chemicals and dangerous goods. So their customers are industries, right? And I had this question to him as to what is driving your technology change, desire to change the technology. And he said that, look, I'm fed up with now everybody expecting us to be like Amazon, right? So even industrial customers, they want to know when the item has been picked up, when it has been, you know, loaded on the truck, where it is. So expectations definitely on visibility has shifted, whether one likes it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've got just-in-time manufacturing and things, this is, you know, huge pressure and risk of downtime at plants as well. Well, that's some really interesting challenges you've been through there. Perhaps I might think about it from the other perspective around what are some of the opportunities that are out there for 3PLs to use digitization, and what benefits would this provide to businesses and the end customer? Naval, perhaps in your experience, are you able to give us some background on the benefits for businesses?
Yeah, so Sophie, this is, a very large question, and there are a number of areas that benefits get derived. Now, 3PLs are in a very highly energized, competitive environment, and they handle a lot of complex supply chains. The old option of simply being the lowest cost provider, as Rajeev pointed out, is no longer effective, as been years back. So they need to now use technology to provide benefits to the customer. Now, coming to the specific benefits that the customers can derive. The end customers or the customers of 3PLs, the shippers, they have the advantage of using technology is to be able to save on time, labor, cost, ensure compliances. The visibility that enables them to have data whenever and wherever it is needed to make the best decisions possible. Leveraging data analytics, advanced reporting, dashboards, BI will help them make better decisions. They should be able to see around corners with this technology and adopt operations, inventory, freight, a lot of factors that they need to consider to their utmost advantage.
Mm-hmm.
The other area that 3PLs can provide advantage to their businesses, that is the customers, are in case of shipping costs to be kept under control. It's very paramount for them. So let's say from the food and beverage industry to farmers and e-commerce logistics, inventory owners value strategic partnerships with tech-savvy 3PLs who can help them control costs. The other advantage that 3PLs can derive is that, either a 4PL takes over them, the role that they're doing, and they just become a commodity provider, or they can also integrate well with 4PLs if they are technologically advanced and have invested into technology. So a number of areas that a 3PL gets an advantage and provides benefit to the end users and customers if he's invested into technology.
Great. We've got an interesting audience question here. It's saying, how can 3PLs leverage technology to improve cost efficiency for the businesses that they serve? So Naval, perhaps that follows on from what you were just talking about. How can you use those benefits to leverage cost efficiency?
It's a perfect question. And this is a space I would watch out for. The cost is paramount in every supply chain manager agenda. And he's under tremendous pressure of the business. Mm-hmm. And this is a huge opportunity. You want to look at data. Let's look at some data. Studies done in Europe and US, and they would reflect globally. In 2018, Europe lost 180 billion because not adequate capacity was utilized. The US data shows that only 27% of the capacity is earning revenue. So there's a huge gap. Therein lies the opportunity for cost saving. Now, there are two parts to the whole thing. How well does the industry collaborate with each other willingly? And that's where technologies like blockchain come into play. Or are market forces from shippers going to force them to collaborate is a very interesting debate. I would watch this space very, very keenly. The other interesting area is in terms of the amalgamation of optimization, analytics, and artificial intelligence, machine learning to reduce cost per order. Now, systems are being designed to auto-configure themselves with this new technology rather than look on static human configurations. Auto-seeding, as some would call it. See, there are some very interesting trends that are happening using technology to keep cost under control and find more and more means of reducing the cost of the job.
Thanks for that, Naval. There's actually another audience question asking, how can I put up a business case for technology in my company, and where is the ideal place to start with any resistance that might come with it? I'm not sure, Rajeev or James, if you've had experience with businesses planning their business cases to get the capital to put in this technology.
I think the first thing, Sophie, just to maybe jump on that question quickly is, before you even do a business case, I think you've got to have that discussion internally, right, on what does technology mean for you and your business, and what are you actually trying to set out to achieve before you even go down, developing a business case and getting that ratified within the senior leadership team or the executive team of your business. I think you've got to go to the whiteboard or to the drawing board and map out what your options are. There's never been a more chaotic time in supply chain. However, that being said, there's never been more opportunity, right, at the same time, because there's so many emerging technologies out there, whether you're a 3PL, any sort of logistics service provider, or whether you're a shipper, for you to harness. So I think it's incumbent on anyone wanting to do a business case for technology is to think about that step first, to set themselves up for success, right? And to ultimately get that across the line with the decision makers within the business.
True. Rajeev, did you want to add to that?
Look, I think James covered quite a few important aspects of going there. And I would say that assess first before jumping onto business case, some basic assessment of where you stand, and look at your operating model for the future. What future state you want to be in, including clarity on which customer segments you want to be competitive, where you want to innovate. So getting a clarity for future operating model should be your starting point. And then business case can develop with the help of data. So I would say that spare a thought, have ample discussion, do a bit of research, and answer the question of how do you want to position your business for the future first, very, very clearly, and derive your operating model from there, and then work on business case.
Great. We also have an audience question from Charles Rendiggs. James, this might be for you. So can carbon emissions tracking be integrated in the digital stream? I know this is something you're passionate about.
It's a good question. Yes, it can. There's a number of technologies that can track CO2 emissions of different modes within the logistics ecosystem, whether it's rail, whether it's road, whether it's sea. And we've had experience personally working with some of these organizations that can enable businesses to do that through their technology offering. Interestingly, we've seen that come into the mix in terms of the sustainability piece much more with, large businesses, whether they're private organizations or public. That corporate citizenship piece is really playing a larger part in the last, 5 or 10 years, and it will play a larger part going forward in the years to come, even long after we're gone. So there's definitely, a lot of technology that can be harnessed to assist with that business problem. And it's an important one which a lot of businesses need to consider if they're going to be successful going forward.
That's really interesting. Rajeev or Naval, did you want to add to that or move on?
Look, in terms of technological intervention in this regard, obviously, sustainability is a big piece today, but the technologies that I'm aware of, apart from the platform for carbon trading and all that, IoT is going to play a big role in how you are measuring emissions and things like that in near real time and making that data available. So I don't know if Naval, you want to add anything from trends that you're seeing in different markets?
Yeah, so it's interesting, we see these trends where people have invested into these, the green platforms as it's called, and integrated it directly with the operations. And so that they can really tap onto what's causing these increase in the carbon emissions. And that's that direct relationship establishment that actually enables them to take very specific actions out of the whole thing. Yeah, so this is another very interesting area to watch. But, all this works if you have invested into a basic platform. If you have old technology and a disintegrated platform, it's very difficult to then get onto what we call as the green technology and brought into play, where you can make it effective. You just don't want to be measuring some numbers and saying I'm good, bad, or ugly. You need to be able to contribute back and see how I can actually improve on my carbon emissions rather than just say I've produced a set of data. And AI/ML is going to play a big role in the whole thing, because today when you do optimization, you only consider the route, the cost, the time, the schedules. And what we see is going to happen is you're going to have these green factors coming into play and saying that's part of your optimization. So it's the amalgamation of this. And again, another interesting space. Are 3PLs ready to invest into it? The answer is watch the space. And shippers are going to force it. Yes.
That's great. So I guess when we're thinking towards the future, Naval, moving to the future of digitization of 3PLs, what will we be seeing in the next 5 to 10 years, other than this sustainability reporting we've been talking about? Could you just take us through some of the other technologies we'll be seeing?
Sure. Sophie, this is a very interesting question. And if I were to look into my crystal ball, I would put my money on 4 areas. The first is robotics. Can I start replacing routine work which people do with robots? It's a physical activity of a pick, pack, load, unload operation, or even data entry operations. Can I have the people doing more intelligent work rather than, just do the physical manual work or the physical data entry work? So robotics is the first thing. The second is on automated information data capturing. Rajeev did allude to IoTs. So we're going to go much beyond mobile apps and scanning, IoTs, RFIDs. Voice is a very interesting area in this industry. There's so many transactions that can happen in voice, enhanced OCRs. The third, and probably my favorite area, is artificial intelligence and machine learning. You're sitting in so much of data, and that's a gold money. How do I actually get that back to serve me? So you've been serving the system for so long. It says it keeps gobbling up data and then keeps giving you your data back. Now that data, it's time for the system to serve you back. And AI/ML is going to change that whole ballgame. And the fourth is what I spoke about when I was talking of cost controls on blockchain. Now, two logistics service providers don't trust themselves. And hence the capacity utilization from the ecosystem is not very effective. Now, what blockchain does is get that fairness into play, get the visibility into play, because in asset-light models, you're going to actually be using common capacities across the ecosystem. And blockchain will give you that visibility and also ensure the fairness, so that the big shark do not eat up the small fish, and each one is able to play fairly. And the competitive edge is your solution designs, your network that you create is the competitive edge, rather than low cost or grabbing some capacity and keeping it under your control. So these are the 4 interesting areas that I see invading the world of logistics service provider in the next half of the year.
There's such a range there, Naval. It's really, we could talk for hours about all the possibilities. It's really exciting. That we've got a lot of questions coming through, which is fantastic. But before we move to that, I just want to ask Rajeev and James, where to now? We've talked a lot about what the challenges are and the opportunities that 3PLs by digitizing. But how can people listening know what to do tomorrow to stay ahead of the curve? James, do you want to kick that question off?
Very good question, Soph. I think if you haven't started yesterday, then definitely start tomorrow, because, and if you haven't tuned in, forward to this webinar, this is the most important part, right? Is understanding where to next. It's not an easy question to answer as a business or as an individual. We're living in very uncertain times, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because the upside is that there's a lot of technology out there available to help and target different business needs. Again, whatever spectrum you're on in terms of being a logistics service provider, managing upstream activity or downstream activity. So the burning question is, what does it mean for my business? And how can I actually drive value for my business operationally and for my customers, to keep my customers happy, right? Because that's what it's about at the end of the day. So in a nutshell, my advice would be for organizations to really sense check where they're at on that digitization journey, and really go to the drawing board and understand, similar to my previous point, how technology could be deployed within the business to add value to your business operationally, and also to your customers commercially, because your customers may be able to leverage off that as well. So importantly, that cross-pollination and engagement between shippers and 3PLs is really critical. And also in that process, developing a technology solution that's agnostic to business needs. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, unfortunately. It's something that needs to be thought of agnostically and designed as such to get the most value.
Great. That's quite a busy tomorrow then.
Yeah, it's busy.
Rajeev, what do you think is the best thing for people to start off by doing?
Perhaps I might be repeating myself here, Soph, but I'd still like to start from the point that what is businesses positioning for tomorrow? What are you aiming at? How do you want to be positioning your business tomorrow? And hence, what is target operating model that you want to achieve? If you have not answered that question, answer that now. Right, so I'd say that ask that question now. And of course, a range of things need to be done immediately. If you are really keen to make a start, so after that, a range of things can come, and perhaps that could be a topic of a full webinar itself.
Absolutely.
So some simple things like, are you able to easily interoperate with your customers? Are you leveraging data? Do you have that capacity? Do you have the technology? Do you have people and culture? So there are a range of things which are closely intertwined with one another.
Yeah, and I liked how you drew before the physical infrastructures in place, but now people need to start planning out their technological infrastructure. I'm going to jump into questions because we've got plenty, so that's great. So first one from Jairam: how can costs be controlled or modulated with current dynamics on container equipment availability and infrastructure issues that we're having at the moment? This is a very topical question. I'll let any of the panelists jump in to answer that.
Well, I'll have a crack at that. So what we're seeing with container ocean freight rates and air freight rates is unprecedented in terms of where they are. So it is incumbent on shippers, on 3PLs, again, anyone within that spectrum, whether they're transport carriers, whether they're freight forwarders, whether they're 3PLs, but particularly in terms of ocean freight, in terms of managing that piece around cost control and equipment availability. In terms of equipment availability in China and Southeast Asia, it's very limited. So that lack of supply is really putting upward pressure on price at the moment, particularly to Australia, but also to ports around the world. So I think a good way to circumvent that in the international context is to really engage with your upstream shippers, so your suppliers, on booking as early as possible and really having a robust inventory management strategy to try and mitigate some of those risks that can be made worse with late bookings due to production times and such. And then it's also on the cost piece is optimizing the best freight solution to make sure that you're reducing your overheads on that international freight piece. And that could mean, not shipping a full container. It could mean using a transshipment service instead of a direct service. There's a number of opportunities there which you can explore to mitigate your risk.
Yeah, early bookings, particularly as we're coming up to Christmas.
And Sophie, what I would add to that is, one is a tactical action, and James spoke of a few of them. One is, I think the industry needs to get together and look at this in a little more midterm and a strategic view also. And as an industry, they need to start looking at what is the assurance that I can give to my air and the sea providers in terms of what capacities they need to be investing in. And it's that assurance level between both these parties that will actually help improve predictability.
I think we have just lost him, looks like.
I might move to another question while.
And so before you go ahead, I was just about to ask, perhaps I would have asked Naval, but now Naval, I think, is away. Let me ask this to James. So James, one of the things, and the cost in the supply chain is a function of your capacity utilization of the supply chain, right? Whether it is 3PL optimally utilizing its assets or international supply chain collaborating well to maximize the capacity utilization at large. Do you see any kind of specific movements in international market? And I know that technologically speaking, we have been talking about blockchain as one of the things. So any quick comment on that?
I think definitely, Rajeev, it's not an easy one. However, blockchain certainly can be, that emerging technology serving as the fabric to bridge that gap within the supply chain and reducing complexity. And ultimately, stakeholders will benefit, right? So I think successful organizations will understand how to harness that to get that agnostic solution best for their business. And they'll be the ones to glean value from that.
Thanks, James. And it does appeal intuitively that the capacity utilization pace. And so far I'm saying in the chat window a question, I think Naval can answer that, which is about, can you please expand on your definition of capacity that you referenced? Only 27% is earning revenue. So Naval, I think it relates to the point you were making, the stats that you were sharing earlier on capacity utilization, either Europe or US.
And how technology can close this gap.
Yeah, so when a carrier or a logistics company or a 3PL is invested into a capacity, a vehicle, a trailer, or a container, he expects that I earn more revenue out of the vehicle. So what is your potential to earn revenue? Your potential to earn revenue that it should be on the road, it should be carrying load, and should be able to garner back revenue into my system. And now, it's not possible for you to ever reach 100% because you're moving empties at times. You have to put the vehicles down for maintenance. And if you remove that portion, you still should be able to use it at least for about more than 50% of the times to garner revenue. Now, there is so much of waste in the whole model, and that is because we are not using technology to get that visibility and also that co-loading model between logistics companies to be able to utilize the capacity. So the more I am able to use that capacity to get revenue back for me is I'll get a better ROI in net. A better ROI means I invest into better capacity, better technology. So it's a circle that feeds itself automatically.
Yeah, that's so true. There's a question also from Carrie. Rajeev, I think this is best for you. What are the risks in digitization and automation investment, and what planning horizons are you suggesting as you talk about investment in technology?
Look, the biggest risk I see is starting without the clarity as to what you want to achieve. And again, I keep going back at this the risk of sounding repetitive. So clarity regarding your business's positioning for the future. How do you want to position your business to serve in the marketplace and your target operating model for the future? So if you have chosen your investment in automation after having answered those questions, then you have perhaps eliminated one risk or reduced one risk. And then, of course, when it comes to automation investment, I would say other important risk mitigation 3PLs can take is to assess their internal capability regarding technology investments. Technology is unlike other physical investment of buying capacity or setting up a warehouse, right? So internal capability to handle technology investment, that should be attended to first. So these are a couple of things. And of course, in any technology investment, there are a number of conventional risks we can talk about in doing any project, that the kind of risks that you have.
We've got two more questions I think we've got time for. So the first one is, are there any best traits I should look at in terms of technology platform for 3PLs? Any rules of thumb to consider? Perhaps Naval.
Yeah, so you need to look at it first strategically. First and foremost is find a partner. Don't try and do things yourself. You need a partner because there's so much around that world that you need to be able to use and garner what is there across the world. Two things that you need to look at your partner. How forward thinking is a partner and what are his investments into forward thinking technology? Are they actually talking of AI ML or they've invested into it? Are they invested into robotics or they're just talking about it? Second thing is how invested and focused they are on the logistics service provider industry. You could have generic technology partners which are not going to add value to your whole team. So people who have invested into the world of logistics service providers and have forward-looking investments in technology are two key traits. Once you have a partner in board, then you can actually jointly then decide on how to take things forward. With your basic business model, your basic strategy, you should then evolve your technology strategy along with partners.
Great. James, there's also a question around the journey that businesses have been on in terms of digitisation. Do you have any examples of where businesses have developed along this journey?
Yep, it's a good question. So the journey is really at the heart of what we're talking about here, whether you're on the journey or whether you're looking to go on it and when you're looking to go on it. In my experience, largely in the international space, but also in the domestic. But one example from the international is an SME business, that didn't really have a technology solution and engaged the 3PL to leverage their solution. At the same time, using those learnings to build out their own internal capability to enhance their existing technology across an ERP, but also leveraging the track and trace software of their ERP. So it was a good example of a business that was able to actually do both. They were leveraging the internal capabilities of their 3PL to drive value for their business, to give them visibility and to enhance value for their own customers. But also in that journey, it was a journey of self-discovery where they actually learn a bit about their own business and develop new capabilities in the process, and effectively scaled up their own technology offering as an individual shipper. So the benefits were twofold in that respect.
Great, that's a great news story. We're reaching the end of our webinar now, but thank you everyone for being involved and all the interaction or lots of questions, which we really love. If there are additional questions, we'll be receiving an email just after this webinar with our contact details, so feel free to get in touch with any of us and we'd love to keep having the conversation with you. Also, you can follow both TMX and Ramco on LinkedIn to keep up with what's going on in our day-to-day businesses and additional webinars and information as we go. But a big thanks to all the panelists, James, Rajeev and Naval. It's a pleasure hearing your insights today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Soph. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.